Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Offsides and Out of Bounds. I'm Drew Patrick. We have Tubby here, but we also have a couple of other guests as we are going to break down the NFL draft the best we can here. Immediately next to me is Mr. Owen Lukens from Mansfield University. He's the sports information director. He's an Eagles fan, clearly. We also have down below, we have Mr. Gabriel Hypes joining
Down
us.
on the corner, as some would say.
Down on the corner, Mr. Gabriel Hypes. And then, of course, joining us is Andy Cleves, the man, he said, the land of Cleves.
Yeah, I'm known on. That's my Twitter handle and my Twitch channel. It's kind of been my Land of the Cleves has been my moniker for years. So we're rolling with it.
And, of course, a special appearance by Jackson, as always.
Because we can't have a show without him. Huh.
So, guys, this year's draft obviously was very different. I wanted to have a drinking game during it every time they mentioned this is a different draft because you heard it all night long. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about the format of this digital format. What were some of the things that really stood out to you guys?
I'll go first. I just felt like the entire time Roger Goodell just tried too hard to be that guy. Like, hey, I'm just chilling. And, like, we were taking bets on how loaded he was by what pick.
Yeah.
He was just like that guy that he tried too hard to seem as comfortable as he could be. And he tried so hard that he made it awkward. So, but, I mean, other than that, I thought it was kind of cool getting a live look at the GMs and the owners. That was pretty cool. Getting to see Billy Belichick's dog was awesome. That dog.
He made some of the picks, too.
So, yeah, I mean, other than that, I thought it was, it was like kind of like every other draft because when they cut away to the players at their homes, it's like, like they've done in every other production where they cut away and there's a camera crew at his house and, oh my God, the tears and the hugs and the obligatory post-college girlfriend is sitting next to them. So, other than that, I didn't really see that big of a difference.
I thought it was really cool. Was it Trey Wingo? He ran the show. He did a really, really good job in narrating. I think that was probably the toughest job. But to add about Goodell, because I watched it by myself, there's no way, unless he was super nervous, that he was in a normal state of mind. Because his mannerisms were borderline ridiculous. So I don't know if you guys can add on that, but I was blown away by Goodell.
By day two, I thought Goodell was going to keel over, man. He was hurting by the end of day two. He was like breaking out in sweats. I was like, get the EMTs in here, poor guy. But no, I thought honestly, I thought overall, I think I liked it better as an overall production than the standard draft. I thought it was more intimate. I thought you kind of got to know the players a little bit more. I kind of like the idea of everyone was at home with their families, as opposed to sitting at the table waiting to get drafted, a la Aaron Rodgers or Brady Quinn or someone like that, just sits there for the whole first round. I hate that when that happens. I hate that. I feel bad for those kids when they slide. But overall, I thought it was I actually enjoyed it better than the normal draft. I did read that they're going to take a good amount of what they did here and kind of mesh it with the traditional draft for next year.
Of course, because it's in Cleveland. Why should we put on the full production in Cleveland?
Right. But yeah, overall.
Wait, is it going to be in Cleveland?
Yeah.
Is it in Cleveland next year?
It's not in Vegas. Didn't they announce?
Vegas the following
year after year. So 2022 will be Vegas, I believe.
Because that announcement was brutal when he did that.
Oh, so
So we'll have 2020.
He was crying. That was really brutal.
Yeah. I will say that it was fun to look into a lot of the homes of these GMs and coaches to see their kids, how their kids see their dad actually get to work. Freaking Jerry Jones in his huge yacht just chilling.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
A lot of weird flexes on that show.
Yeah.
A lot
I think it
of
was
weird
disgusting.
flexes.
I think it was disgusting.
Cliff Kingsbury's mansion that he lives in, like, it's unreal what some of these shots were. But also, I think from a programming note, it was really cool to actually see the certain networks work with each other, like NFL Network and ESPN actually work together and put a cohesive broadcast together. Because you got to think, like, there is a person in each of these homes. So they're not being as socially distant as they were promoting, because each and every one of these houses has a crew member in it from one of those networks to make sure that that feed gets back to the four-letter network or NFL Network or whoever it goes to. So I think the amount of work that went into this year's production, I think, was probably more than a normal one, where you can sit in the green room and have at least 4 or 5 families. You don't get every single shot that they got at home. It seemed like almost every kid who was drafted had a camera in his house, and that doesn't happen. So I think that was incredible, just to see the power of, when there's really not much going on, how these networks can compile their staffs to put together a good product that for 3 days made a lot of people just forget about what else was going on in the world.
I completely agree with all of you guys in the fact that I think it was better. I think the only real issue is what I've heard, like, on and on and on about how some of the stuff they talked about did kind of get a little ridiculous. I mean, I think that's like the only thing, but then you have to think, all right, how much stuff did they have going on during that? Pretty much nothing. They're all separated. How much content do you have? I'm sure they were kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel with some of that stuff. And it also creates a better story. So I understand why they did it. It did get annoying at times, and I think some of those were a stretch. I've seen some of the players come out and say, hey, I had no problem with them talking about my mom like that, bringing up that. Some of them are different than others. I think the stories about people recovering from drugs are a lot different than somebody being murdered when somebody was young, and there's no real reason to bring that up. But I understand why they need to, and that's the only real reason that's the only real problem I had with all of it. I liked it. I thought it was entertaining.
Yeah, because they went full on American Idol with it. You know what I mean? It was like every other story was like so sad sack and like, oh my God, this guy had to overcome so much. And I'm like, dude, am I watching a sports program or am I trying to watch The Bachelor? Like, what is going on?
It was definitely more intimate. And by the way, no one's mentioned it yet. What the hell was happening at Mike Vrabel's house? What was going? Did anybody see that? Did anybody see? Everyone saw the shots of that, right? Holy smokes! What was that?
Yeah, I think Mike Vrabel is just trying to take the title of meme lord. You know what I mean? Like, that dude is going to be a meme forever. And Jackson, you need to quit. You knocked over my guitar, dopey.
Well, and then this shot of CeeDee Lamb snagging his phone back as quick as possible. I think that's been on ESPN a couple of times today. That was pretty slick.
Those are great draft moments that we just kind of haven't had like in previous years. Those are just unique moments that we're going to be remembered from this one. Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this one really, really, as everyone keeps saying, unique and different, and it will be. So let's get into the meat of the draft, the actual picks, and let's start on a positive note. And who do you guys believe had the best draft out of the teams who made picks?
Pittsburgh Steelers, fantastic. First overall pick Minkah Fitzpatrick for us. Fantastic player.
It pains me to say it, but for me, I as a Browns fan, Baltimore had one hell of a draft, man.
Yeah, they did.
Good Lord. The rich just get richer. They snagged Patrick Queen in the first round, linebacker, LSU. One of my favorite players in this draft, mostly because one of the Browns' needs were a linebacker, so I kind of read up on a bunch of those guys. And then you add J.K. Dobbins from Ohio State, Justin Matabuke, who was a beast defensive tackle, Malik Harrison, linebacker, Ohio State. They even got that wide receiver. Is it Proche? Yeah, good prospect. They got Geno Stone, a good safety prospect. Like every pick they made, it was almost like the Ravens were picking from a different pool. Like all these, and it seems like this happens every year. Like just these top blue chip prospects always fall in their lap, and it just happened round after round with them. And it was for my money. And it pains me to say it, Baltimore had a hell of a draft. But that's nothing new.
Yeah.
It shows how far you can get with good ownership. I mean, year after year. I mean, I was just reading since they've become a franchise, just how many Hall of Famers and all pros and just all the above have come through Baltimore in just the span of 20 years. It's
I know.
absolutely insane how well they've been able to do every single year.
Yeah.
The thought of Lamar Jackson and J.K. Dobbins just scares the ever-living hell out of me.
Right. Well, I mean, like Drew and I talked about it in our podcast prior to the draft, and I said I have a whole love-hate relationship with it because the reason that the Ravens are so tough and they're so stacked was because of Ozzie, and Ozzie was a Cleveland guy. Ozzie's a Cleveland Hall of Famer. He's in our Ring of Honor. But what he did,
it all goes back to the backup.
I'm telling you, and next year it's going to be even worse, Gabe, because the draft will happen in Cleveland. So every single draft pick will have a connection to the 216. I'm telling you, it never fit. Don't test me. I will relate it all back. But yeah, and I was really nervous for them, for Baltimore this year, being at the first draft without Ozzie. And they still hit it out of the park. It's like they just followed his playbook and didn't miss.
They did pick an LSU guy, much to probably Ozzie's chagrin, the Alabama man. I really think one of the best drafts this year, and they've had the great offseason, was Tampa Bay. I really thought Tristan Wirfs was the best tackle in this draft. He is really good, and they did trade up to get him, but he really fell into their laps. He was a top 5 pick who they got at 13. Antoine Winfield Jr., their second pick in the second round. He is a ball hawk safety. He is so good. I saw him absolutely destroy that team, Penn State, this year. He won that team. And also, it's a funny note that his dad's last career interception was against Tom Brady. I thought that was a very cool antidote that they threw out. I like Keyshawn Vaughn, the running back out of Vanderbilt. I think he's a guy they're going to have a revolving door there in Tampa for the running back position, but I think he's a good. And then in the 5th round, I usually only focus on the top 4 rounds because those are the guys we know. But in the 5th round, Tyler Johnson, again at Minnesota, he broke out this year. And let's be honest, they don't need any more great targets, and they added another great target in Tyler Johnson. I think Tampa Bay is winning the offseason right now.
And, I mean, I agree with you guys completely. I think year after year after year, the smart ownership teams just kill these drafts, and Baltimore just continues to do the right things. But not to suck up to our host here, Drew Patrick, but I really like what the Dolphins are doing even beyond this draft as a whole. But the Tua at 5, I mean, you're probably one way or the other with him. But we focus so much on the injury, but the same thing could happen for a bust rate with these other guys. They could just not be good. I think you might get the best quarterback in this draft with the 5th overall pick, barring injury. Now, if he gets hurt in a year, this draft is a waste. But if Tua is what he can be, I think the Dolphins got to steal at 5.
See, I love the Tua pick. The reason I don't have Dolphins as the winners is I'm not sold on their first-round cornerback. I think they could have gotten other cornerbacks, but they liked him to be their nickel cornerback, especially when they just spent a load of money on Byron Jones to bring him. Getting a quarterback in the first round, I wasn't key. But, yeah, that Tua pick at 5, being able to sit there and still get the guy you wanted is incredible. I think it's more of a knock on both the Giants and the Lions, who wanted to trade out of that pick and didn't, that Miami just sat there and got their guy.
what a smokescreen that was. Like, it was almost a foregone conclusion that Detroit was trading out of 3. Like, it was every mock, so many mock drafts had them trading out of 3. All, and that's what was fascinating about that top 10 and pretty much the entire first round. Not a lot of trades, hardly. I mean, none in the top 10. I mean, the first trade was Tampa Bay, right? Who you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that was the first trade. Yeah, and they only moved up a pick. Exactly. So I wonder, do you guys think that was anything to do with this uniqueness of this draft and everybody quarantined to their own war rooms?
I think so.
Yeah,
I
think
because
so too.
I think it's definitely a lot less communication, and people didn't know what was going. That was a huge report that like nobody really knew what was going on, and there was a lot of people that was going to surprise a lot of people. I think the first 15 or so, first 12 to 15 picks were pretty chalk. I mean, from the mock drafts that I saw, it seemed like it was like going in order. But after that, it seemed like a lot of chaos. And then you had, like, as soon as you had just about like the Packers taking Utah State, Jordan Love, out of pretty much nowhere, it seemed like the draft kind of got out of hand. And I think the weirdness of coronavirus just changed so much. I think it changed so much, and along with the trades.
Sure.
Well, I think, too, with the trades is for the first time in a while, need and skill level lined up for the first 7 or 8 picks to where, I mean, you could argue Lions could go QB, but other than that, teams got what they wanted, and it lined up with big boards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, because I'm a firm, if 3 of these top tackles, let's just say Thomas, Wirfs, and Wills were all gone by the time it got to the Browns at 10, there's no way this regime for the Browns was taking a pick there with those 3 guys gone. They were definitely trading out. I don't know that to be fact, but I can just assume that, because yeah. So you're right. The board did fall as far as need for a lot of teams really well, especially even the Browns. Like they didn't expect Jedrick Wills to be there. And they had their pick. If you'd have told me they had their pick of Wills or Wirfs before the draft, I wouldn't have believed you.
Yeah, I was really surprised that Cleveland didn't panic either. Like, Cleveland went with their needs. They prioritized their needs, and they stuck with them, especially when there were still a lot of other really sexy picks left on the board at that time. Like, you could have got, like Judy was up there forever. There was a couple other big-name guys. Skilled guys who still would have been good players, but we didn't really have a need for it as the Browns. Were still left on the board, and rather than making the big splash, Cleveland actually addressed what Cleveland needed rather than grabbing a headline. So to me, that's marketable improvement, but I'm still saying 4 wins.
I was going to say, Cleveland has had a good offseason, though. Like a smart offseason and a smartly quiet offseason, which is not what they had last year. And I think honestly think you will see a lot of improvement from the Browns this year. I like their draft. Grant Delpit fell into their lap. Great pick. Yawning Gabe down there.
It's fine. It's fine, Gabe. Try, just trot your aging, bionic, hip having, man of the mountain looking quarterback out there again. And then are you going to have James Conner out there playing quarterback after he goes down this year, or what? What are you doing?
Hey Tubby, worst case scenario, we get a Browns wet dream and we go 8-8. That's what it seems like. We can trot anybody out there and go 8-8.
Yeah, the bar's actually lower too, because next year they're going to put one more person into the playoffs, so you don't even have to reach that high.
Right,
yeah, did you see?
Even talk about who had the worst drafts.
We'll get into
everyone to stop that nonsense going on. So let's talk about that. Which teams do you think had the worst drafts or the most questionable drafts out of all the teams?
Well, to jump back to what was just talked about, I defend the Jalen Hurts pick, but for different reasons. I don't understand the Packers at all going to Jordan Love. And the people that have tried to compare it to Aaron Rodgers, I don't think it's even close. Aaron Rodgers was a top 4 pick that fell to Green Bay. They'd not even only reached on Love, they traded up to get Love. And unlike the Eagles, where, when Wentz gets hurt, the backup has worked. When Rodgers is hurt, they're done. So I don't understand that pick.
no clue what the Packers are doing. No clue. And you're right. It's not the same story as when Rodgers fell in the draft. Not even close. They're not even Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers were nowhere near graded the same prospect. I mean, it's apples oranges. I just don't. You're coming off a good season last year. Rodgers, I think everyone would agree, has at least 2, maybe 3 good years left. I think. How do you not get him some more weapons? How do you not build that defense? For the life of me, do not understand what the Packers were doing in round 1. And to me, that was the biggest. It wasn't a shock that Jordan Love went first round. That wasn't a shock. It was it's a reach, but it wasn't a shock. I was just shocked. It was the freaking Packers.
And they traded up.
Yes. Give up assets.
There's still weapons on the board there. And then I know the 49ers.
This wide receiver class was loaded. There were so many on the board.
Allow me, if you will, because this will tie right into who I think had the worst. Allow me to defend the Packers here real quick.
Do it.
Because a lot of times the draft will tell you one thing about an organization. The draft will tell you, A, if a team is proactive or reactive, and B, what that team thinks about the rest of their division. So Green Bay is sitting there looking at their division and looking at what the considered weapons in that division would be. Well, the Bears don't have a quarterback, so Allen Robinson's not really a factor because no one can throw him the ball. Minnesota just traded away their best weapon to Buffalo. And right now, the Lions don't have an offense at all, period. So they're sitting there saying, hey, we're in a pretty good spot here. Looking around us, we really don't feel like we're going to have to outscore people because we have the best weapon in this conference as our receiver in Devontae Adams. They also, in the NFC Championship game, just saw a team beat them throwing the ball 8 times. That's it. They threw the ball 8 times. So Green Bay's sitting there saying, you know what? What has been the one thing that has held us back the last couple of years? And it's been Aaron Rodgers getting hurt. That has been the thing that's held them back. And let's be honest, the quarterbacks that they've had sitting behind Aaron Rodgers have not been even the quality to where Jordan Love is right now. Plus, so you bring in Jordan Love, you let him sit behind a great quarterback. I don't agree with them trading up. That's the only thing that I'm upset about, but I don't hate the pick of Jordan Love. You let him sit behind your team, behind your quarterback, and say Rodgers goes down or say that happens, you then have a backup who you feel more reliable in there at that pick. Then A.J. Dillon with the second pick. Matt LaFleur came from Tennessee. He also just watched that team go to the AFC Championship game really by running the ball and being dominant on the ground. That is the type of running back they want A.J. Dillon to be, and A.J. Dillon could be. He is a bowling ball of a running back. So they're looking at it that way as I think Rodgers late in his career, we don't want him to get hit as much, so he's going to hand the ball off more. I think that's what they're telling you with their first 2 picks. That being said, I think that rolls into my what do teams expect from their division? And so my 2 losers are Oakland and Denver because they see Kansas City there sitting with weapons, and they are so scared that they have to outscore that team. So what do? Oakland picks Henry Ruggs, who is a fast receiver. Not even the best receiver out of that school who is available. They picked the fastest. I think the ghost of Al Davis snuck into Mike Mayock somehow, and they picked the fast guy. Then they picked Damon Arnett, who a lot of people said wasn't even a first-round cornerback out of Ohio State. He's a good cornerback, and a cornerback out of Ohio State, which has worked for a lot of NFL teams. But why did they pick him? Because he was a fast player. He's a fast cornerback. Then they go and back-to-back picks, pick 2 more receivers. Lynn Bowden, who was a quarterback last year for Kentucky, they're going to move him back to receiver. And Brian Edwards out of South Carolina, who's another receiver, in back-to-back picks because they're terrified of Kansas City. Denver does something very similar. They pick Jerry Jeudy. I love that pick. Second round, they go back to receiver, pick KJ Hamler. Obviously, I love that pick. But, again, they're terrified of what Kansas City is doing, so they're going and getting receivers when they have a pretty full receiver core there. Then they pick Michael, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, Ojimati, the cornerback from Iowa, who is a 4.45 40 guy at cornerback because they're scared of Kansas City's weapons. And then later on in the draft, in the third round, they pick McTelvin Egan, a big lineman who ran a sub-5 at 309 pounds because they need speed and they're scared. They drafted scared, these two teams. I like some of their picks, but they drafted scared, and for me, that's why I think they're more of a draft loser this year instead of a winner.
I want to go back to the
Packers.
the Packers, just because I think I can't disagree with that more. Just because thinking back to last season, do you think that Packers team is a team that would be able to win the Super Bowl?
I think Aaron Rodgers makes that throw that Jimmy G missed.
Yeah, if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, sure. I mean, yeah.
I think the Packers were a team that had a very favorable schedule and a very favorable route to the NFC Championship. And I don't think they have the weapons to get past San Francisco, to get past Baltimore, to get past all these teams I think are clearly above them. And so the argument of saying that they don't need the weapons, especially when Jimmy G only throws 8 passes, I think that's kind of wrong. And then also thinking back the year to 2016 in the morning after, and we used to talk about, is it viable to draft a quarterback and let them sit and let them become the next thing? Because that's what it used to be like. And we used to argue, is there anybody really like that? And there was only a couple. 4 years later, there's even less. Think about how much the NFL has changed. Who's the last person you can remember that was drafted to sit and wait 2 to 3 years?
Not 2 to 3, but he did sit 1 year, and that's Pat Mahomes.
Exactly. Patrick Mahomes sat 1 year, and it was mostly because, hey, maybe he wouldn't have been ready. We don't know he was going to be Patrick Mahomes. There was a lot. I mean, he was drafted 16th or 15th overall. He wasn't exactly the Patrick Mahomes we know today. So
but
that's
there was
the only
also
one
a lot of quarterbacks who needed to sit a year too, that should have sat a year.
Yeah, but that's just not the way the NFL works anymore. And so if they're drafting a quarterback this early on in Jordan Love, they're thinking this is a quarterback that needs to start right away, because that's how the NFL works. And it doesn't work in the way that, you sit for 4 years, you sit for 3 years, and then you become Aaron Rodgers. It's just not like that anymore. And I can't think of any other example, especially in 2016 and especially in 2020. So I don't like that pick whatsoever.
And they don't address it in the draft at all. And unless you don't buy into receivers, probably the strongest receiver draft we've had in a long time, they don't address that at all. So that's another reason they didn't back up that pick later on.
Yeah.
And you're not just hurting Rodgers, you're hurting Devontae Adams, who, when his contract does run up, you can't expect him to have an amazing year after amazing year when he's the only option.
I agree. I think Packers are definitely the worst draft out of every team, mostly because of that quarterback so early, but also, they didn't take a single wide receiver in a team that desperately needs weapons.
A team that throws the ball a ton.
Yeah.
They throw they come out in 3-4 wide receiver sets like a lot.
It makes no sense.
That changes. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. That's true.
I'm surprised if they try to change that.
They might have to, because I think they might have to.
Well, it's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it works out for you.
So obviously we talked about the teams and the players, or the teams that we liked and didn't like, but there are some surprise picks later in this draft that some of us liked, some of us didn't like. We all have talked about Jordan Love in numbers, so let's keep there.
I also like Jordan Love. I will say that.
Yeah. Were there any other picks in this draft, individuals, that you thought was a very questionable pick by those teams? Here's looking at you, Mr. Eagles. This is where you can defend the Jalen Hurts.
Go
I'll
ahead.
look at the Patriots real quick. Who knows what that team's going to be real quick. Going to be this year. And I think what they're doing is making sense to roll with their backup, especially with coronavirus. Like, how are they supposed to bring in a new guy, teach him the system? You might as well roll with the second guy, because if you bring in a Cam Newton, maybe he gets you to 9 wins at best. What does that really do for you? You might as well just take the sucky season, maybe, possibly.
Lawrence.
But also, to take with all those picks, to take next to nobody with wide receivers, and then also to take 3 sub 180 pound wide receivers and undrafted free agents after the draft. Hey, it's the Patriots, and they've been the best organization for the last 20 years, and so they know what they're doing. I just personally think that was a little weird. So I won't say they had the worst draft, but those are my questionable picks that is just making me think a little bit.
Yeah, the Patriots, the draft was entirely about Billy Boy proving the point that he is the mad genius of the NFL and he can do no wrong. Because if he would have went and got a quarterback high, like one of the top picks, like I expected him to do, then he would be admitting that his system only worked because it had Tom Brady. He's going to go out there and prove the point that it's his system that made Tom Brady, not Tom Brady that made his system. And so, like, that's why he's like, yo, I'm going to march out with this third-string quarterback. I'm going to get a couple undrafted. I'm not even going to pick any of the guys that are out there for instance right now.
Tubby, I'm just going to – I could see that happening, but I'm going to play conspiracy theorist, okay?
All right.
Okay. So the Patriots knew they were going to be bad this year. They knew that they weren't going to be able to compete with the teams in the AFC and the NFC. And so what if Tom and Belichick just came to a mutual agreement like, hey, it sucks that you have to leave, but maybe you should go to a team that you can get another ring with, that you can be competitive with. We can go into a rebuild and maybe land
Trevor Lawrence.
a Clemson quarterback next year.
They're stockpiling picks.
And it works out maybe in the long run. Hey, Tom, maybe spend your last year or two in Tampa Bay. We're going to stink this year. It's just going to happen. And then we're going to roll the dice and be set up for the next 20 years with Lawrence.
See, I get it. And I know that teams have tanked. Cleveland tanked. You can't tell me otherwise. There's no way you go, what, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, 2-32?
1-31.
Yeah. 1-31
Yeah.
for 2 years. There's no way that you do that and not say that you're tanking. My issue with that is knowing Billy Boy, I don't think it's in him to tank. I really don't. Now, like if it was
Maybe it's that little bit of Cleveland left in him.
Well, that Patriots defense is still going to be top notch. It's still going to be good.
Here, we were stacked. If it wasn't for that individual that took our team and moved them to Baltimore, we were winning it that year. We were in the lead. Like, we had the division on lock. Your Stillers were poo. They were garbage.
I don't think they were poo.
They were
Well,
poo.
Belichick took over in Cleveland. I want to say the Browns were like, when he took over, I think they were coming off of 5-11, 4-12, something like that. And then by year 3, Browns were 11-5, made the playoffs. So I mean, he did flip that. He completely flipped the Browns roster. He brought in a lot of his guys from the New York Giants days, like Chip Banks, stuff like that. Yeah, it's I don't know what Bill. I don't know. I've after all these years of watching Bill just dominate the league with Tom, I just have confidence in Bill. I do. That defense is still good. I still think there's a chance that they acquire Andy Dalton somehow. I just don't. I just think that's a great fit in New England. Because I don't know why Cincinnati would want to hold on to Dalton. I mean, to be honest, you can get
have to
assets
because
for him.
they have to build a line. They don't have a line, Andy.
Yeah. Yeah,
And if they trot that rookie quarterback out there, they're going to Tim Coucher quicker than we Tim Couch.
but
Yeah, I think
he's a hot.
I mean,
He's a commodity, though. You could get you could get assets
Yeah,
for
but
Andy
you
Dalton.
could-
I
you
know
could
he's not a world beater, but Andy Dalton could play in a good system with a good coach and a good.
Yeah, but you could still get same value for him next year.
Possibly, yeah, possibly.
I mean, as long as you don't break them,
Sure,
you know?
but Burrow's going to start day one. I think that's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and if he's going to start day one, I think you would move him for assets, and not to mention it'd be better for Andy Dalton too. I mean, you think he'd rather be backing up Burrow and Cincy or starting for New England?
I just think that he's going to be a bust.
Sure,
But if you're New England, also, do you think, hey, do we roll the dice on Andy Dalton, especially in coronavirus times where we can't even get him ready for the season? Do we roll the dice on him?
Because these guys are still throwing.
Because you're terrified that if Burrow doesn't have a full off-season really to work, that maybe he wouldn't be as ready. I think Burrow's a guy who would be.
That's a good point, Drew.
But I think if I'm the Bengals, if I own the Bengals, I'm keeping Dalton at least up until the trade deadline because I don't know. I genuinely don't know
That's
how
fair.
the off-season's going to.
Sure, that's fair.
I bet you there's 3 or 4 guys on somebody's estate that has a large backyard, and these dudes are running routes and going over timing.
Brady got
kicked
out.
Because nationwide, it's groups 10 or less. You know what I'm saying? That's why everybody.
Yeah, but Tubby, there's 11
just
on
like
the
the
field
high
at a
school
time.
house parties. Everybody put their cell phone in the bucket. You know, and
There's
then
11
boys
on the
went out
field
the
at a
backyard
time,
and
Tubby.
threw.
Yeah, which
There's
offense?
11 on a field.
At home.
Yeah, you can't have 10. Can't have more than 10.
Well, I know, but I'm saying no. But I mean, the biggest work though comes from the receivers and and timing and your running backs. So
but to learn a whole entire playbook in an off season at home
is very.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think they've been doing it long enough.
In a new system.
How long has Joe Burrow been playing? Since Pee Wee?
Granted,
yeah, but it's a new system. And you think about how often they talk about how long quarterbacks need to gel into a system. It could take a year or 2 years. Now you're talking about doing it at home by yourself and trying to get it done in about 3 months.
Granted, if there's one.
No, I mean, look, a route is a route. Like a sluggo is a sluggo. A skinny post is a skinny post. It's the verbiage that you got to learn. So, like, if you develop some kind of, like, Babel-esque or Rosetta Stone to learn the verbiage of your book, you got it unlocked. Because how many ways is it to call, okay, you go out button hook, you go out on a skinny post, you go out on a sluggo, boom. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but do you think Tom Brady throws the ball different than Tyrod Taylor?
Which is why you need to throw to them, which is why I said that the receivers are camping out on somebody's estate to be thrown to by their new quarterback.
We're getting busted.
And then all you got to learn is luggage.
Hey, do you think the diva wide receivers of the NFL are spending their days at their quarterback's house and practicing routes during all this?
Because you only get the ball when it's fed to you. They can't throw the ball to them damn selves and run down and get it. So look, if I'm a diva and I want my points, I want my yards, I need my stats so that way I can be walking around with fat stacks, then guess what? I'm going to that skinny little 21-year-old's house, knocking on his door, saying, hey, Ma, what's for dinner? I'm here for the next 3 weeks. Do you need me to take the trash out? You want me to walk the dog? Because I want my touches. I want the ball. I want my stats, and then give me my stacks.
And Tubby, if I had wheels, I'd be a wagon. It's not ideal. It's not light and day. It's not anything like that. If you had
wheels, you'd be the whambulance because you whine a lot. Welcome back, Gabe. I missed you.
I missed you too. I'm in West Virginia now. You can come down.
I know it. You're only a short trip down I-79. I can get there from here.
All right.
We can move on.
Troll again. Okay, so we talked a lot about the quarterbacks and the Patriots not drafting a quarterback, and to that point of Mr. Belichick wants to prove that he can do it with any quarterback.
He's loving
Their
this.
first pick was a Division II for the win. Safety was incredible. Probably drafted by the dog. Just press the button, that guy. But, there were 2 quarterback picks in this that I didn't like. And it wasn't Jordan Love, because you heard my rationale, and it wasn't Jalen Hurts, because I actually like that pick a lot for the Eagles. The 2 quarterback picks that I didn't like was Jake Fromm to the Bills and Tommy Stevens to the Saints. So I'll start with Jake Fromm. I didn't like Jake Fromm in the 5th round to the Bills because Jake Fromm's biggest knock was he didn't have a strong arm. You're going to put him in the winds of Buffalo with a weak arm. Guess what? That's not going to work. I promise you.
Okay, the winds of Buffalo are a myth. They're not.
Oh!
You heard it here, folks. You hear me, Bills Mafia? It's a myth. That stadium is sunk, like in the dang ground. Yeah, there's wind up above, but swirling in the stadium, it ain't like kicking at First Energy. You know what I mean? When it hits you on the face.
Before you go on, let's welcome our 6th panelist here, Mr. Mark Shelley.
How we doing, guys?
How's it going, man?
You know what? Late is better than not at all. He's joining us here. We're talking about certain picks we didn't like. We've touched on Jordan Love. I tried to defend that pick just so you can catch up. But what I've said is one of the quarterbacks I didn't like pick here was Jake Fromm. And Tubby's arguing with me with the wins of Buffalo. But the other thing that I'll mention with him and his weak arm that was his biggest knock is you're still going to have to deal with weather in Buffalo. And the weather's not going to cooperate with him. Playing in the SEC, that's why I'm not a huge fan of SEC quarterbacks, because they don't really have to deal with the weather as bad. I don't like Jake Fromm to Buffalo, especially when you have a young quarterback there. Yes, I get you need a reliable backup, especially because he got hurt this past year. But I don't think that's the right guy, is all I'm saying with that pick.
So
Aaron Rodgers went from California to stinking Green Bay, where they play in frickin' the frozen tundra. You're telling me a sunshine kid can't adapt to weather? Put on some stinking Under Armour, some long gloves, a little bitty mittens, and get your scrawny butt on out there and throw the dang ball.
Aaron Rodgers had arms, though. That's the difference.
that's the same thing, though. You're bringing up the point you're bringing up is the weather factor, but what's different with Josh Allen? The kid's from California, and he's playing in Buffalo. So there is no difference here. So if you're saying a kid that played his college game, played his high school in Texas, played his college game in Georgia, is somehow different in having the way of playing high school in California like Josh Allen did, I don't see where that really matters.
I'm on Drew's side, though, because Drew's original point was that the biggest knock was that he just didn't have the arm strength, and then additionally to the weather, and then adapting to that weather.
Aaron Rodgers has a great arm. We've seen Josh Allen's arm. They're cannon quarterbacks. Jake Fromm is not
Josh
a quarterback.
So drink some
Josh
muscle
Allen
milk
was
and
a
some
top-
curls. How hard is it?
It is a
Tubby.
it is kind of a weird fit because I don't know. Like, I guess I'm not saying you have to draft. I'm not saying you have to have your backup quarterback have the same skill set as your starting quarterback, but it kind of helps. I mean, look at Baltimore with the Lamar Jackson. Who's their backup last year? Robert Griffin III, right? So like, it's kind of a weird place for him to go because he's backing up a guy who has a completely different skill set than he has. You know, I mean, Fromm and it's a weird fit. I tend to agree. I knew Fromm would eventually go, but Buffalo definitely was not. I think I was just more surprised Buffalo took him than anything, I guess.
I'm surprised he lasted to the 5th round.
That's fair too.
So far. Because I kept waiting for him to go and go and go. Because I like Jake Fromm. He's my guy. I like him. I watched him on that. Shut up, Gabe. I watched him on that QB1 show. You know, that streaming series that they had where they interview high school quarterbacks and they follow them going their senior year and then they go in to play college. So I watched him through that and I followed him through college because I liked him on that. He was generally the only quarterback I liked on that show. The other quarterback on that show was Tate Martell, who I found to be an arrogant, spoiled little.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? FCC bleep out here. And then the other kid was out of Harrisburg, and I don't think he really did anything. So, you know, I don't know. I like Jake. I do.
And the other quarterback I didn't like drafting, and I'm glad you're here, Mark, because I know he's your boy, is I wasn't a fan of the Tommy Stevens pick for the Saints. Only because look what the Saints did in the last couple days. They gave Taysom Hill another contract, and they signed Jameis Winston to be the backup. So you draft a fourth quarterback. You're not going to go in with four quarterbacks. Plus, what is Tommy Stevens' skill set? It's Taysom Hill. So unless you drafted him to prevent another team from having a perfect scout for Taysom Hill, I don't understand the pick of Tommy Stevens, who's dealt with injuries and really hasn't played a lot of quarterback in college due to certain things that I get it, he's a big arm. He's Taysom Hill, but
yeah,
maybe not quite there.
I think you just proved the point of why they did it. I don't think his body can hold up, but in that playoff game, Taysom Hill's on the field 40% of the snaps. I don't know the exact number. If he goes down, you're losing 40% of your playbook. So I think it could be an attempt to back up your Taysom Hill, but his Tommy Stevens' body is not Taysom Hill. So that if that's what they're trying to do, I don't think it's the right guy.
Yeah, I think you're right with that aspect, but I think with Tommy Stevens, you look at what he sort of brings to the table in terms of when he is healthy, the athletic ability he has. He's not a guy that you can solely sit there and go, okay, we drafted him as a quarterback. They could have an entirely different plan for a guy like this. Very similar to what they do, what the Ravens essentially kind of had in their mindset with when taking Trace McSorley. Is he going to be the guy back being the protector on punts so they can run a fake? Is he a guy that they can use as he's the one guy in our playbook, sort of like what Penn State did with him, using him as what they call it, the lion position, I think is what they named it. So it's very much, I feel like that's something that they could use him for. He's a guy that if you put the ball in it, that was one thing that he was very similar to Trace McSorley in college when they played together, is both you knew were going to be running threats. The difference was McSorley was the guy that was going to cut around you and cut to the inside, while Stevens was the guy who's going to lower the shoulder and run through three guys on his way to the secondary. So I think you have that opportunity of, this is a guy that if we put the ball in his hands, everybody sees him out there as, oh, he's just another quarterback out here, but we can use him as a dual threat. And all of a sudden he comes in as a secondary, as maybe even a slot back, and he comes back, you give him the ball. What's he going to do? He's going to stand up and throw it. So suddenly you have an entirely different range. I mean, I don't necessarily hate the pick. I think it's one, if you're preventing that sort of the preventing the scout mentality, yeah. But at the same time, I think it's a viable option to use as a depth option in your playbook.
I just worry with him, and especially this. The Saints had 4 picks. He was the 4th out of 4 picks. So you get a guy who, yeah, you'd have to maybe fight with other teams in your conference who want him as a potential scout quarterback. But it's only your 4th pick, and you're going to get a player who may see the field. Granted, I get it in the 7th round. You take your risk picks. But I just don't like it. I don't like the pick at all for the Saints. I like Tommy Stevens, but I don't like it for the Saints because I think they already have the best version of what Tommy Stevens will be in the NFL. And they're clearly in love with him because they gave him a new contract, and they keep touting him as the next replacement, or the replacement for when Drew Brees retires, despite Winston going there for a year and doing the Teddy Bridgewater experience. So since we have you on here now, Mr. Shelley, we have to get your opinion on the other 2 quarterbacks that were drafted early that made a lot of fans unhappy, including your fan base. And your fan base. So let's talk about that pick here for a hot second, that Jalen Hurts pick in the 2nd round. Do you like the pick, first of all? And if not, why not? And if so, why so?
It's not necessarily that I don't like the pick. I don't dislike it, and I don't like it. I'm very in the middle here. And one reason why you don't take Jalen Hurts where does he end up? This is a guy that you know can win football games. And with Carson Wentz, yes, is he essentially the prodigal son in Philly, and everybody thinks that he's going to win us X amount of Super Bowls? Yes. But at the same time, what's he done in the playoffs? He continues to get hurt. And so there is a liability factor there. And Sudfeld, okay, so he's come in and made a couple of good throws in the preseason. You get a guy that, look, this is a guy who has come out, and despite what Mel Kiper says in what did he say? He said he loves being a backup. That's dead wrong. This is a guy that wants to be a starting quarterback. That's why he left, because he knew he wasn't going to be the starting quarterback. That's why he went to Oklahoma to try to lead them to a national championship. And so now you get a guy that's going to come out there and immediately start slinging, and he's going to and he provides a running factor that I don't think Carson Wentz does. Carson Wentz can run the ball. He's mobile, but he doesn't necessarily run the ball. You let Jalen Hurts run the ball, it's a whole different playbook that you open up there. So I don't necessarily hate it. I think for the fact that it happened, there's positives out of it. I don't necessarily know if that's where we needed to take him. There were a lot of other needs for the Eagles, linebacker in particular, but they sort of made up for it later on in the draft and really made up there on the defensive side of things. So despite what everybody wants to come out and say and essentially wants to riot because of this pick, I don't really see that. I think there's a prime opportunity here for him to put the pressure on Wentz and for Wentz to get even better. And if somehow he exceeds expectations and becomes the starting quarterback and takes it away from Carson Wentz, then all of a sudden we're not having this conversation whether or not we like the pick or not. It's how awesome was that pick eventually down the road.
And Owen, you had almost a similar view to that pick.
Yeah, I love the pick. I think, especially in the state of Pennsylvania, if you look at the Steelers and what the Eagles have done the past few years, the most important position on the field has been the backup quarterback. I love Jalen Hurts personally, and I don't think Jalen is a guy to where if Wentz comes out of the gate a little slow, that the organization is going to feel pressure to play Jalen Hurts. Although if you keep Nick Foles, he's expensive, and idiotic fans think Nick Foles is better than Wentz, so you get that side of the things. I don't think Jalen Hurts is that guy. And if you're going to take a quarterback that early, he can help you in other ways if need be. I like him personally as just Wentz's backup, but to add Mark Shelley, can you put him in motion? Can you throw in some trickery? Can he be a poor man's Taysom Hill? I think he can do that. You look at the Steelers, if they have you playing quarterback last year, Drew, they might make playoffs. So I think it's a very important position. And if they had a second-round grade on Hurts, I don't mind them taking that early. I think the riot is that he went in the second round, and I don't have an issue with the second round.
I think a lot of the Philly rioting was the first-round pick with Jalen Reagor there is because, let's be honest, fans in Philadelphia probably didn't watch a lot of TCU football. They just didn't. But they did watch the national championship, so they did see Mr. Jefferson play. I know that was the pick everyone was angry about, and they did watch the national championship, so they saw CeeDee Lamb play. I like the Jalen Reagor pick. I like the Jalen Hurts pick. I like what the Eagles did. Eagles fans on Twitter were complaining about how they just let CeeDee Lamb go to the Cowboys. I get CeeDee Lamb's a great talent, but did you guys watch his highlights? Did he ever have anyone covering him? Literally, did anyone ever cover CeeDee Lamb? Every single highlight, he is 20 yards away from anybody. So clearly, I get it. CeeDee Lamb is great, but I want a guy who I know can deal with a physical receiver or a physical cornerback. I like Jalen Reagor there for the Eagles over a CeeDee Lamb. They needed to address receiver. They got a pretty good one who is also a pretty fast one in Jalen Reagor.
Obligatory shot at the Big 12 here. I mean, when you look at it, did anybody really play defense against him? Yeah. Anybody play defense against Reagor? No.
My mom threw for 400 against them.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
The only team that plays defense out of there is Oklahoma, and even that's shoddy at best.
For sure. Yeah. No kidding.
There's reasons you see 55, 54 games every weekend.
I think the only quarterback we haven't touched on is Herbert.
Herbert and Eason are the quarterbacks and all the ones in the later round. But yes, Justin Herbert to LA. Do we like it? Do we don't like it? I was saying Justin Herbert was a guy who everyone, because there's always that one quarterback who everyone decides, you know what, he's the guy we're going to hate. Last year it was Daniel Jones. He clearly did well for himself last year. He proved at least he was worthy of that high pick. I think with Justin Herbert, yes, I was relieved this team picked Tua, but I also believe Justin Herbert has the skill set to make it work. He might not have the mentality to make it work, but he has definitely the skill set to make it work. I like that he was successful in college because I hate when quarterbacks come out who have had rough college careers, but they have the intangibles, so they get picked high, a la Jared Goff, a la Jake Locker. Herbert was successful in college, so I think he could be successful with LA. It's a tough division, but he's going to be asked a lot because, as I said, that division's running scared of Kansas City. So I think they're going to get a workload from Mr. Herbert. Any other comments here on Justin Herbert?
Is Herbert going to start out of the gates?
I hope
You
not.
think he starts
It's
week one?
Tyrod
I hope
Taylor
not
right now.
either. He's one. We were just talking about that earlier about quarterbacks that don't sit anymore. I think Herbert is a candidate for one to watch for a bit. Not that they have an answer in front of him, obviously. That's why they drafted him. But
Right.
I think it's going to take
be
Herbert time. It's going to take him time.
I think it's going to be unique because I would usually say with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, I think give it 6 games and you're going to have the fans being like, okay, it's Justin Herbert time. But here's
Been
the
there,
thing.
done that.
But it's Tyrod, and he only sees the right side of the field. So if you have a route on the left, you're not getting the ball. I'm just saying.
But let me just say this. We've never seen this before with Tyrod Taylor playing for a fan base that has no fans. So there's going to be nobody complaining after 6 games.
That's
We
not
might
a
let
bad
Justin
point.
And you're not wrong.
That's not
So
a
you're
bad
saying
point.
when I come out to LA to visit you, we can get tickets cheap and we can go tailgate?
Tubby, I'll just say this. If you go around LA, you know how you go around Cleveland? You'll see, am I allowed to curse? You'll see the Browns.
Look,
You'll see.
you're right, dude. I lived in LA for 15 years, and I've said this forever. They have the worst sports fan base of any city.
Yeah.
The Lakers are number one there. When the Dodgers are good, they show them some love, and that is it. That is
You
it.
walk around that city, you do not see Rams,
No.
and you for sure do not see Chargers stuff anywhere.
No, it's Laker town, and even that's fair weather as hell. I mean, it's a unique sports town because let's face it, a lot of the people who live there weren't from there, and they're not LA sports fans anyway. So I think that definitely plays into part of it, that LA sports dynamic.
I could see Justin Herbert being successful because he might have the chance there to kind of, take a back seat and not really be in the limelight and kind of get to sit for a little bit, learn his craft, learn the NFL a little bit. And then when he gets to step up, maybe we see him being very good and we see all of a sudden the Chargers might be a team that's popular in LA. This might be, I almost said San Diego. This might be the Chargers' chance of being a team that's popular in its own city. Like this could
do
be
they
really,
ever
really big.
do they ever trump USC though for a fan base or no?
USC is the same way though, honestly. Like, I mean, USC has had countless recruits. It's just it's very much not a sports town.
There's too much to do.
Yeah.
It's a lot of reasons. It is, and lots to do, too much to do. And I'm telling you, a lot of people who reside there now aren't from there. Like I lived there for 15 years. You think I cared? You think I cared about the Lakers? Hell no. I'm a Cleveland Cavaliers fan. So it's a lot of determining factors of why that is, but it is a fact. LA is the worst sports town in the country.
Just to add quick, I'm not a Herbert guy. I think he's boring. I almost would have been a Jordan Love guy, not at 5, but if you were to trade down go after a guy like Jordan Love. But Herbert should be thanking his lucky stars that he went to the Chargers because I don't think he needs to play. I think they're going to be good, and he has Keenan Allen to throw to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think fit matters a lot for these quarterbacks. I mean, you've heard everything I've said has been fit-based for the quarterbacks, and I think with Herbert, that's the place that made the most sense.
Yeah.
The Chargers. And so he goes to a perfect spot for him to be successful.
You guys think the Chargers had him above Tua on their board?
No way.
I'm just
If
such a
that's the
Tua
case,
guy.
then how do you not trade up and go get him?
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're going to
That's true.
trade for a quarterback, do it.
Yeah, that was one of the more. We talked about that earlier, and that was surprising that Detroit didn't move out of 3 because everybody thought Detroit would move out of 3. I thought the Chargers were the more likely candidate, even more than Miami, because I figured Chargers had to get ahead of Miami. That was the whole point. Like that's why they were in my eyes, the favorite to move up.
Unless, and I don't know if it works this way, unless they knew they couldn't trump a Miami offer 4-3, and Miami was going to go to 3 if this happened.
Possible.
I think it was more of a race for Tua than we all know.
I think that it was a coin flip for them. I really do. I think ultimately they were like, we're going to take whichever quarterback falls in our lap.
Which I don't like that.
I don't either, but I think they really were at a point, the Chargers were, that sitting at 6, knowing that there's probably no team later who has the capital to move up into the top 5, say if that trade happened, there's no other team moving up. So we'll sit here and get one of the quarterbacks that we really like.
But, I mean, unless you're petrified of that hip, there's no scout that would have talent Herbert and Tua the same. There's no way.
And if you're scared of that hip, then why are you valuing Tua that much that you wouldn't draft him? Yeah, I completely agree.
Well, since we got him here a little late, we have to go back to Mark, your opinion on the Jordan Love pick. Obviously, that was the most shocking, I guess is the best way to say, pick of the first round.
Totally.
What is your thought on that pick? Trading up to get the quarterback of the future for a team that was in the NFC Championship.
Yeah, it was puzzling to me. I think Love's a good quarterback. I think there's a lot of potential there, but to go up and get that, I think that now raises a lot of questions, and maybe they're doing it to sort of light a fire, and put pressure on to win and to get the job done, and try to ride that out in the last couple of years that we're going with here. If that's what, if that's how you want to look at it, is time winding down for a guy like Rodgers. But, I didn't really understand it in the fact of, I'm not a big fan of draft a guy underneath and maybe try to light the fire to get that last little bit out of Rodgers and then sort of comb him to be the next guy up. I don't see that. I don't think there's a need yet, because Aaron Rodgers is going to play how many more seasons? So you're next in line, your heir to the throne is still sitting there and still a backup and still learning. I'm sorry, but like there's only so much learning you can do. I mean, a season's worth of learning is what you need on the sideline, and then get in and start learning from experiences. But how long is Aaron Rodgers still going to be there? And if that's the case, then how long is Josh Love just sitting there on the sidelines doing nothing and essentially wasting away at prime time that he could jump right in, maybe be the difference maker right away for some team, and now you're letting his career just sort of sit there and become stagnant?
I think to add, because we all got our 2 cents out, and we pretty much said the same thing. Also, selfishly, I didn't want Jordan Love to go there. So, as kind of a Jordan Love guy, I want him to play.
Yeah, I sitting at Green Bay, he's not going to play. I mean, there are so many different opportunities for him to go out there, and maybe this is some master plan that Green Bay has of hell, keep him for a year. Keep him through the rookie deal even. And then all of a sudden sit there and be like, hey, some team needs him.
Hey, New England, how you doing?
And now we can go and get our, trade him away to a team that needs a quarterback, get picks, and then use those picks to move up in a later draft down the road. And at that point, then Rodgers is starting to move out, and all of a sudden now you're looking at your true heir to the throne.
As the only one who liked that pick, I'm not going to do the whole spiel again. But it was long-winded, Mr. Shelley, I promise you. But again, it's a 36-year-old quarterback who has multiple injuries, and they just saw a team beat him in the NFC Championship game who threw the ball 8 times. They're going to be running the ball more this year, is my guess. That's why you picked Jordan Love.
Well, the only positive out of this is, yes, Aaron Rodgers isn't the Aaron Rodgers of old, but still, Aaron Rodgers on a bad day is still better than, I want to say, 85% of the quarterbacks currently starting in the NFL. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, he might drop off a little bit because of age and knees and getting hits and all that stuff. But, even Aaron Rodgers on a bad day, like, for Cleveland fans, like, before Baker, I would have taken Aaron Rodgers with, like, one leg and half an arm, you know what I mean, and still get me to 6 wins. You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. But yeah, I like to pick – I always like picking a guy that you can kind of groom. I don't like getting him in the first round. I've kind of come around to it that if you're a quarterback and you're picked in the first round, especially like the upper tier, like picks 1 through 5, like the top 5 picks in a draft, are game day ready college talent. They can walk out of college, step on the field, start day 1. Picks 5 through 10, maybe they need a camp, but they're ready come opening day, right? And then after that, you expect the rest of the top, like below the 10th pick and through number 32, those guys to make some type of impact on that team that coming year, not waiting a year, right? Now, if you pick a quarterback up in the second round, I can see sitting that guy. And I know I'm getting the dead cow look from Gabe because Gabe's like, yo, what did we just argue about for like 4 years? I get it. But picking these quarterbacks that are projects, right? Love, Herbert is a project, right? Tua is a huge question mark. So I would make that a project as well, and all these guys went, in the top round, and you're like,
this was a weird quarterback draft. I mean,
no
after Burrow,
these guys are ready to
it's a
start.
unique quarterback draft for sure. It was a different one. Yeah, I think my really kind of reiterating Love is really my only issue. It's not like he just slid to them into their lap. They gave up assets and moved up to get him. I don't know, man. That run defense in Green Bay was not very good last year. They throw the ball a ton. They use 3 and 4 and 5 wide receiver sets a lot. I just thought they would build that run defense and get Aaron and Rodgers another weapon or two, but no.
Thank you.
But but like I said, if Love would have slipped to them at whatever pick they had, that would have been a different story. I still would have been a little surprised, but it would have been. But I think the fact they gave up assets is my biggest deal.
Yeah, and this is a guy that, like I said, if you're going to groom him, you're grooming him for at least 4 years until Rodgers is 40, because that's when he's done with his contract. So It's either they know something that we don't in terms of he's like, hey, this is going to be my last ride. I'm going to be done at 37. Or letting the guy sit for 4 years.
Yeah.
Well, if they don't get a solid O-line, he's going to be done at 37. Holy cheese and crackers.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, well, we've hit the end of our show here. But before we go, since we have a great panel here, Tubby and I always do one final parting shot. Gabe, you know this very well. Really, we give you the floor to talk about something you want to talk about, and you get the floor. So we won't interrupt you. You get whatever you want to talk about. It's your floor. Well, I say we won't interrupt you, but Tubby might. So
I'm that guy.
Let's start with you, Mr. Owen Lukens, do you have anything you want to talk about here? Your parting shot.
Yeah. I just thought this wide receiver draft was fun, but that being said, I can't remember a year where every single person in America that I heard didn't have Ruggs number one, and he goes number one. So I think it just goes to show how little these teams let out or how little we know, because the fact that Ruggs went one, I don't think I heard that from a single panel, a single show, a single podcast that he was going to leapfrog Judy. So that was just a shock to me, and I thought it was a really fun draft. I know we talked about earlier how the way they did things was unique, and I hope they take some of this into the live drafts.
Gabe Hypes, do you have any parting shot here?
Is it traditional parting shot where it could be about anything? All right, so I spent the last 35 and a half hours in a car, and I was just going crazy and just bored as all heck. And I did a lot of research, and I've come to the conclusion that in 1945 Berlin, Adolf Hitler was able to escape, and he went to South America, and he lived there his remaining life. And if you do the research now, there's about hundreds of thousands of direct descendants on Nazi officers. Huge Nazi high-ranking officers, some of the most despicable people, hundreds of thousands of German communities in South America that only speak German, and they still live there to this day. And those high-ranking Nazis came over, and then they were the president. One of them was the president of Argentina. Hitler was for sure alive and living down there. Why is no one talking about this? That's my.
There's an entire show dedicated to it called Hunting Hitler.
Incredible.
I just watched Inglourious Bastards last night, actually.
Great movie.
Yes.
What's the TV show, Tubby?
It's I think it's called Hunting Hitler, and it's on the History Channel because I watch it in between episodes of Curse on the Oak Island.
I need to check it out. There's no way that. Did you know that the body that they found and that has been in Russia the past 80 years, this is Hitler's body, is the body of a 35-year-old woman?
Yep.
I don't even know how to respond to that. Andy, you're up. Do you have a parting shot here?
Yeah, pretty much with the crazy world we're living in right now with COVID-19, and everyone be safe and be nice to each other and think about other people, because it's not just you who's going through this whole situation or having issues with this situation. It's affecting everyone. So I think everyone let's take a step back, keep doing what we're doing, and just be nice to everyone to get through this, and think about other people, because you're not the only one going through this, and lots of people are going through having horrible things happen to them right now. And shout out to all the medical people, all the nurses and doctors and everyone in the medical field. You all the real MVPs. Yeah, just everyone stay safe, man, and we'll get through this.
Fantastic. Mark, do you have a parting shot here?
Well, besides wanting to wait or fast forward 3 years so we can see the Baltimore Ravens become sort of the new NFL super team based on their recent success. It's going to happen. I'm telling you.
You're going to kill 3 people here.
Hey, just
Ravens,
like every other
Ravens
quarterback Lamar is like, he'll be done in about 3 years.
Hey, it's a parting shot, sir.
Ravens are the new super team in 3 to 4 years' time. But besides that, I'll tell you what, like you said, with all this COVID stuff going on, yeah, remember, it's not just you. But in terms of sports, it is just you. Because I'm telling you, the first league that comes back and starts televising games, their viewership numbers from here on out for the next 10 years are going to skyrocket. They're going to make so many new fans because they're going to be the only thing on TV for that. Even if it's a 2-week period where they're the only one on before everybody else comes back, whatever sport is the first sport back is going to be hugely influential in having an entire new fan base, because you're going to have all these people bored. And the best way to keep people at home and tell them to stay home, put sports on TV.
I want a prediction now. What sport is that going to be?
Honestly, I think it might actually. It's either going to be the NBA or it's going to be soccer. It's going to be one of the Euro leagues.
I think it could be golf too.
That's true. Yeah,
Golf,
horse
very,
racing.
very well.
UFC,
Horse racing's in there too.
No,
UFC
no,
also.
Andy, no, because if it's golf, Andy, instead of watching golf, I will watch on continuous loop your podcast about horror shows. Go ahead, shameless plug time, Andy. Let it out.
Shameless
Let everybody know where
plug.
they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Land of the Cleves. I also have a Twitch channel. We play a variety of games, mostly horror games on Twitch. It's also Land of the Cleves on Twitch. But what Tubby was talking about, I'm a huge horror nerd. I was born and raised in a video store but in the 80s. My dad first opened up a video store in Ohio in 1985, little mom and pop's place. Was there 20 years and fell in love with movies and especially horror. And I have co-host a horror podcast called Dead in Santa Carla. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, everything. We just talk about good horror movies and not so good horror movies. That's pretty much it.
Anybody else have a shameless plug they want to put out? What you guys are working on? No, Bueller.
Is that your parting shot? Getting a?
I'm the only degenerate content creator here. Perfect. All right.
No, I mean, I also have a Twitch account. I also have a Twitch stream called Tubby for a Cause. You can get at me on Twitter at GTubbySchmidt. Whatever. If you disagree with me all the time, like Gabe, feel free to hit me up. Voice all your opinions. Just a helpful reminder. These opinions that I express on the show are solely those and mine alone. Do not reflect any of the opinions of our sponsors and or our other panelists or hosts. Please direct all comments and questions to me at GTubbySchmidt on Twitter. But no, as far as my parting shot goes, I found myself getting excited Sunday to watch the final of the Celebrity NFL Madden tournament on ESPN. And in the finals, it was Hollywood Brown versus Snoop Dogg. And I was pumped for it.
You were
in it.
Yeah, you were, Big Daddy.
I was like, no, you fool. Don't throw the ball. You got to run it in Madden. You fool. But, yeah, and in the end, spoiler alert, Hollywood Brown did end up beating Snoop Dogg. Yeah, I'm not willing to take bets, but I'm pretty sure many a log had went down into Snoop Dogg's lungs via playing the game. He was visibly upset. But, I mean, it was just weird, like, that in this sports-starved area that we find ourselves now, how we're willing to latch on to things. Luckily for that tournament, I felt it was put on well. I have a long history of watching people and tournaments be put on via the internet and seeing their production values and what they can do. Sometimes just rushing to have a product is a lot worse than waiting and producing a good product and having good content. Also, thank God for the Last Dance documentary on ESPN. That thing is a lifesaver. I love it. I love all the dirt between Michael Jordan and the Pistons. I love that it's like 30 years later and he's still like, yo, F-bomb that MFer. Like, I dig it. Like, I'm here for it. I'm getting my popcorn. I'm drinking all the tea. I'm soaking it in. I love it here. It's awesome. I was also in Chicago, like during that 97 series, and I kicked myself in the butt because I never made it down to see Jordan play live. I saw him play on TV all the time, but I never watched him play live. So as an adult, when LeBron came back to Cleveland, I made it a point to take my sons. So I think we played somebody stupid like Milwaukee or somebody that couldn't win. Like back when Milwaukee was trash, not Milwaukee from this year.
That trash team, Milwaukee, yeah.
Well, no, but I mean, they were trash. Like,
I know what you mean, Tubby.
Yeah. So like we got to see him, and I got to see. So now I can say that me and my sons watched LeBron play. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get in an argument whether he's better than Jordan or Jordan's better than him. I just know that in my lifetime, they are two of the elite basketball players ever. Like for me and my generation, it's LeBron, Jordan, Magic, and Bird, all at that top tier, and everybody else is somewhere below it. And I'm not a basketball guy. I never had connection to those teams of the 80s like poor Andy did, living the shot. Like seeing the shot again didn't hurt me as bad because I was always on a wrestling mat. I never really got into basketball. So
True story. I was 9 years old when that happened, and I bawled my eyes out in the shot. Bawled, cried like, wept like a woman. Yes.
I think that's why everybody's struggling so much right now, and everybody's clinging on to sports because, I mean, at least from where Andy and I come from, sports is such an identity within our community. Like we identify so hard, and when I say that our fans live and die by our teams out here in Cleveland, it's absolutely true. Like if our teams have a bad weekend out, like if the Indians blow like a weekend series or something, like don't go into the work on Monday and try to talk baseball. Like people are horrible, you know, and that's just baseball. Let alone like when the Browns lose. I mean, we've been losing for what, Andy? Like 30 stinking years now?
Yeah,
we've sucked forever.
I know.
So
in all like, sports.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and still like we're surprised when we lose and it like hurts and it sucks.
Yeah, no, I tell you, being a Cleveland Browns fan builds character, and I will leave it at that. Have you ever seen Shawshank Redemption? Remember when Andy Dufresne goes through the pile, the pipe of shit for 200 yards? It's kind of that's kind of like being a Browns fan, kind of. We're hoping to get to the other end of the pipe, though. That's the goal.
Yep, 100%. Because I'm so tired of growing up and hearing my dad and my granddad talk about Jim Brown and Otto Graham and how they were like slamming it and winning it. And we have all these 8 championships that apparently to the rest of the NFL, all 8 of them don't count.
They don't count.
Somehow. But no. But they can count for Green Bay, but they can't count for Cleveland. I get it. It's fine. It's fine. It's not like it's stacked against us. I mean, God doesn't
Tubby, you've gotten your 8 parting shots.
This is the Browns because he hates us.
All right,
that's all I'm saying.
Tubby,
all right, I'm
moving on. Your time has run out on your parting shot.
You got eight shows worth of parting shots.
Oh man! So my parting shot.
All right, I'm Tubby. Have you met me?
America loves a comeback story, or loves a story of redemption. Clearly, you watch the NFL draft, and every single person who was drafted got his story screamed on the air. But we might be seeing another potential comeback story that we don't really see as a comeback story, but it could be, and that's Jameis Winston going to New Orleans. I genuinely believe that is the right move for Jameis Winston. And it is a very smart thing for him to do, which in the past he has not made the smartest decisions in his life. But this going to New Orleans, I think, is a very smart decision for him. Learning from one of the best quarterbacks in the league, in Drew Brees, you can learn how to make the good decisions. He has the skill. You don't throw 30 touchdowns if you're a bad quarterback. It doesn't happen. You throw 30 interceptions, however, if you make bad decisions on the field. I think learning from a guy like Drew Brees is going to be unbelievably important to his career to learn how to make those good decisions on the field. And perhaps, maybe just perhaps, we'll see Jameis Winston as a starting quarterback sometime here in the future, and sometime with a stronger head on his shoulders, making the right decisions, he could develop into a really good pro, and I think he is on the right path for that.
Can I touch on that, Drew, real quick? Sorry, I know it's your parting shot, but have you seen like the reports of how much Jameis looks up to Drew? I mean, looks up to Drew Brees.
Yes.
Like,
I'm surprised that didn't come from Tubby, I'll be honest with you.
Oh, about Tubby's muted. Why is he muted?
I have company at my house, so I didn't
Oh,
want to.
okay.
You know what I mean? But I didn't catch the last comment though.
Muted.
I adore Jameis going to the Saints. I think it's going to be absolutely huge for him. And I hear that the Steelers gave him a much better offer money-wise, and he took the Saints route. I think I think it could be a huge comeback story. I mean, I am really hoping for it, and I think it really could happen. I think it's a great landing spot with the Saints too.
No, he still stinks. Him and all the crab legs he stole. The heck with him.
Yeah.
All right, now I'm muting all of you. No, so guys,
take
thank
a
you all
seat.
so very much for taking the time today to come on to this and talk a little NFL draft. Hopefully provide people an escape from whatever they're dealing with right now to just watch 6 schmoes talk about the NFL draft. Thank you all so very much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Drew.
All right, and that is going to do it for our show here today. Thank you once again to the guest, Tubby. It was a fantastic show once again, and we will be back next week. Take care.